Hi everyone, my name is Farhad Karamally and welcome to Bizverds. This is the place where words meet results. And with us today, we have a very special, a dear friend of mine. You see on the screen, Michael Morgan. Michael Morgan is the CEO of Herrmann. He's had amazing experience all across the region, more so in Asia Pacific and Australia. Now, there are a lot of things you'll probably find out about him online. So, on LinkedIn, if you go, you'll probably find a lot of information on him. However, what you may not know about him is, and this is something that you may not read about, is what an amazing soul he is, full of life. My first interaction with him was a couple of months back when we ended up working for a project. What happened is that there was a particular client of ours, and they said they wanted to use the tool called HBDI, and I wasn't certified in HBDI. If anything, to be very honest, I did not even know what HBDI was. I did some research. I was fascinated with what it was. We reached out, and cutting the long story short, that is where I met with Michael. It was one of the most memorable experience of mine running a training program for that client because halfway into the session, the technology challenged us. So there I was with a laptop in my hand as if carrying a baby, and I was roaming around with Michael around, trying to make sure that we deliver as per commitment. But fortunately for me, Michael, I must acknowledge it publicly as well. I think the session that we had, the digital session we had before the session, helped me tremendously understanding exactly what HBDI is. And then I think then it was just me getting certified, you helping me out in that, you educating. I think it was just so amazing, the entire experience. And what I really like about you is your sense of humor, your analogies and anecdotes are amazing. And today we would love to hear some of that as you explain the HBDI. The topic for today, as we had discussed, is specifically to do with trust. Michael, so what's happened is in my conversation with my clients recently, I think in the past 10 days in particular, many people have highlighted the importance of different areas of development. Now, those different areas of development, specifically for whether it was communication, whether it was time management, whether it was problem solving, whether it was attitudinal, whether it was change management, eventually I could sense the trust was being questioned. That there's an element of trust which is not there, because of which that sometimes people would say, you know what, wake up every morning 9 o'clock, go online. So you people have actually started seeing each other much more than they were seeing each other at workplace. They've started talking to each other much more than they would have spoken at workplace. In spite of the cigarette breaks and the gossip corners that you have, they're just at it, and they're at it all the time. It's like people have to prove that they're working. And that is where the importance of the subject like trust came in. And we felt that it would probably be best that we talk about this challenge of trust, and also see how HBDI in particular, whole brain thinking, could actually help in a subject like trust. So, Michael, over to you. We want to hear from you in terms of what is trust. And I'll just fix something and come back. Just give me a second.
All right. Okay. I don't know where he's gone, but he talks about trust.
Okay, I'm back.
Are you back? Okay. So you talk about trust, but why should I trust you? Because I've never met you. Are you right?
I'm there. Yes.
Yes, of course he is right. Yeah.
Okay.
You talk about trust, but I've never met you face to face, and yet it's interesting. We have a remarkable and short relationship, and I guess in today's world, it's a virtual relationship. As you say, I don't know how you found me last year, but you contacted Herrmann, and for better or worse, you got me, and we kind of worked together, and yeah, we ended up, or you ended up delivering this, what of course you say is an amazing workshop, and I believe you. The interesting thing though to me was you were the one there, you were physically there. I was kind of beamed in, from Sydney. We did some great stuff, and it worked. And you'd have to ask how or why, did it work? Because on one level, we're very different. Why should I trust you? You know, we come from different worlds, we look different, we're everything else. And yet what we discovered, of course, is in another sense, we are incredibly alike. And that, I think, is the key to our relationship and our trust. Because I guess, yeah, I kind of know how you think. But
Yes, you do.
yeah, but the scary thing is you actually know how I think. You know, and so in my world, I think of a dance, and we dance pretty well. Yeah, we've never met, but we understand each other and we dance. And that to me is what trust is, you know, in the virtual world. My problem, and I'm sure it's yours and everybody who's listening tonight, is the virtual world arrived, you know, at the speed of light.
True.
Oh, heavens above. You know, it was only 6 weeks ago I was running workshops face to face. I was working with teams face to face. I was talking to people. I was touching them. I was, you know, and that world has gone. And I think that another thing that has gone, which makes it really difficult, and you know, we're probably sick to death of hearing about this virus, but this virus is interesting because you don't know where it is. You can't see it. You can't hear it. You can't touch it. You can't do anything. And so you go and meet somebody, and all of a sudden you think, well, I better, you know, stand off. And that, as I say, has changed the world. We're now very much in this virtual world. And yet it's interesting because I now believe, and I guess that's what we're here tonight to talk about, is trust is actually more important.
True.
So let me talk for a minute, because I know a few of you listening know what I'm talking about. You know about the HBDI, which is this thing called the Herrmann Brain Dominance Instrument. You know about whole brain thinking, but probably a lot of you don't. So what I want to do is give you a little bit of background. Then I want to talk a little bit more about trust. And then I want to give you some very, I was going to say simple, but that's the wrong word, some powerful to-dos so that when you don't go to work tomorrow because you can't, because you're in lockdown or whatever, your people are working from home or wherever, you will actually be able to start, say, to develop, you know, some very strong and what I think are critical, you know, relationships. So let's have a look. I've got a few slides that we'll go through. So the Magic Master will make this happen, I believe.
Yes, he will just make it happen.
This is trust.
This is trust. Yes, this is actually trust. Let me do a screen share, and I should be there. Okay, but you will have to guide me because as I said, I'll not be able to see my own screen, myself on the screen.
That's
you just have to guide me.
I usually go, 5, 4, 3, 2. We can see a lot of screens, and eventually we'll come
to Michael's slides. There you go.
Hey, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the first one. Yeah. Just a quick aside. I used to spend hours in Sydney traffic, sitting in my car, driving along, going to work. I now spend hours in the internet traffic because everybody's gone home. All the children have gone home. Everybody's online. And so the internet is a bit slow. So please bear with us if you do have to sit in the traffic, you know, a little bit. Okay. Let me talk about Herrmann's core idea, and this is it. Everybody thinks differently. Right? The biases you carry around with you in your head have profound effects on the way you work, communicate, and collaborate. If you're like me, my wife Annie, who I adore, thinks very differently, and sometimes annoyingly so.
Is she listening to you?
No, different, totally different. Okay, next one. Now, in order to grow, and if ever there is a time when we need to grow, it's now, because my world, Farhad's world, your world has been turned upside down, and it's going to stay upside down for a while. So in order to grow, we have to choose to see what I call our biases for what they are, because they're not good, bad, right or wrong. They just are. I see the world this way, you see the world that way. And we've got to open ourselves up, to the reality. And that's the essence of what I want to talk about, which is whole brain thinking, which is not the answer to coronavirus and what we're in, but it will help. It honestly will help. So let's see what it is. Okay, thing called whole brain thinking. Now, what I'd love you to do, if you can see me, is get both hands and very gently just put them on your head and give your head just a little massage. Just gently like that. Yes, or on the top, or
Am I doing it right? Okay. Because I can't see myself.
yeah, no, that's perfect.
Okay.
Because in there, we know, is one of the wonders of the world. And right now, with what is going on in the world, we need it more than ever. Right? We need
True.
to think in what we would say a holistic way. However, that's not the way of us humans. Now, I'll show you. What I'd like you to do is to fold your arms. Just relax and fold your arms. Okay, isn't that nice? Now what I'd like you to do is to fold your arms, but fold them the other way. The other way. Now, some of you will be able to do that. Some of you are probably still trying to do it, because isn't it funny? You can now go back to the way it was. When I said fold your arms, you didn't think, did you? You just folded them the way you've always folded them, and that's fine, because it's nice and comfy. If I say change, you can do it, but you have to think about it. And it feels uncomfortable. It feels a bit different. Okay.
True.
Yeah.
And I think that's what habits do to people. Over a period of time, the one side of the muscle, it just comes very naturally to us. And you're right, it did require us to think, how to do it.
Yes. And especially now in lockdown, when you're told you've got to go home, when you don't want to go out because there's no trust, because what are you going to do? You're going to revert to folding your arms the way you've always done it.
Yes.
Because that's safe, that's comfortable, that's nice.
Right.
However, if ever there was a time to fold your arms a different way, this is it. We have to think differently. We have to think differently globally. We have to think differently in our cities, in our towns, in our villages. And we have to think differently at home, because you're going to be locked down for a while.
Yes. So, I think that holding at home is pretty relevant, because a lot of people say, while you have people who are working now sitting at home, so you may be working from home, but the children at home don't realize that this is not holidays. This is actually working from home. So the habit of seeing a parent sitting at home in front of the computer trying to work just doesn't settle in very well with children.
That's right.
And that's what they're thinking is.
Difficult. Yeah. So back to whole brain thinking, and it does link to the arms and everything else. During life, for two reasons. One is the way we're born, but then our life's experience, we develop preference to the way we think. I did agriculture, you did science, somebody else did hospitality, somebody else did logistics. Why? Because they think differently. Now, this is a model of thinking, simplified but still very powerful. So some people will have a strong preference for the blue quadrant: logical, rational, analytical, quantitative thinking. Scientists, fighter pilots, dentists, doctors, finance people. Other people in the green: controlled, organized, planned. So they're in logistics, they're in government, they're in local government, they're in our librarians, they're computer programmers, where sequence and organization is important. Other people are in the red, which is more interpersonal, feeling-based, spiritual. So they could be anywhere from, from monks down to teachers, down to health professionals, down to everybody who is working on the coronavirus thing right now. They are the people in the red quadrant. Then you've got people in the yellow: holistic, experimental, integrating, synthesizing, like Farhad and I, who meet virtually and immediately think, I know exactly, and and we're off. Now, interesting enough, none of us have, or very few have, an equal preference in all four. We have a strong preference. I have a strong preference in the yellow and the red. You might have a strong preference in the blue, in the green, or whatever. All right. Now, let's go to the next slide and let's talk about trust. Why should I trust you? Now, I'm not going to mention any political names or any global figures or anything else, but I'll tell you what, in America and Russia and even China, there are some people who I do not trust.
Right. It was simple. I think the country said it all. Yeah, I think when my preferred thinking of yellow just integrates and synthesizes people to situations. Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
yeah. So why do I trust people? Why do I trust Farhad when I've never met him face to face? In Australia, we have a couple of sayings. One is, I trust him because we're on the same page. I don't know whether that translates. Another is, we're just in sync.
True.
I just kind of know what he's going to do. He knows what I'm going to do, and it's now in this world, when all of a sudden you and everybody you work for and with is probably being sent home, I believe that trust is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Because if I want Farhad to trust me, I've got to trust him, and vice versa. So how do you do that? And how do you do it quickly and effectively? Especially if you've got a team of 8, 10, 12 people who've disappeared. They've gone home, as Farhad said, to the kids and heaven knows what. They probably don't have a home that's equipped with the right equipment and internet and everything else, to be like their office. It's a big ask. And yet that's what we're doing. We're saying work from home.
True.
Yeah.
And I'll just remove it because I've just got a message that probably the banner below makes it a little difficult for people to read. So I'll just very quickly go back to the screen, remove the banners. But, speaking of this, I think you're spot on, especially in the context, for example, if I go into my own brain preferred thinking, for those of you who are listening to us, my own preferred thinking was actually, I always felt that I was a finance person. That's actually how I started off my career. However, if you notice, I eventually got into training, and I've actually spent a large part of my life actually doing and running training programs and consulting for clients. And it's a very relationship-based job that I now do. What I realized is the reason for this in particular is I find more joy because when I discovered my thinking preference, it was more of a yellow and red. So by default, I ended up being, and it was very interesting because if you're not liking your job or if you feel that something is off, it could possibly be because it's not your preferred way of thinking. Am I right,
Mm.
Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Great. And that is where the element of trust also comes in. If you put me into a role which I'm not really excited about because the thinking is not natural, by default, my performance will be affected. Michael, I'll take you on
Yes.
to the next slide from here.
Yes, please. Yeah. Okay. Now, for whatever reason or anything else, I actually know how Farhad thinks, and he knows how I think. And that kind of makes it a bit easier. But most of the time, you actually won't know how your people think. Unless, say, you've worked with this, you've done the HBDI, whatever. You're going to be guessing the way they think. Now,
Right.
what the whole brain model says is if you don't know how they think, if you don't know how they cross their arms, right, then you had better hit all 4 quadrants. You'd better hit the blue, the green, the red, and the yellow just to be sure. It's a bit like coronavirus. Wear a mask, wash your hands, keep a distance. You've got to do all 3 and 4 things, not just one. So when you're dealing with people now and you've sent them home, right, I believe you've got to address 4 things to build that trust so that, you and they will be not only productive, but they will thrive in this new environment at home. So what are the 4 things? Now, what I want to do is to give you the 4 things in one word, and then we'll look at a bit of detail. So the 4 words are clarity, process, people, and freedom. Let me talk about each one just very quickly on this slide. Blue quadrant people, thinkers who are logical, rational, analytical, mathematical, and technical, like clarity. They do not like ambiguity. They want to know the answer is 6. Hello, meet me at 10. The answer is yes. It's black. It's white. It's not grey. It's not ambiguous.
Mm.
All right? So, rule number 1, you must give people clarity. We've got a really good example in Sydney at the moment where our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has said, you're in lockdown.
Right. That's a very clear message. That's it.
Yeah. Well, no, because he said, except you can go to the hairdresser, you can go to this, you can't go to that, you can go to, and he's muddied the water.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
So it's a lockdown, yet there are exceptions, and you never know where the exceptions actually stall.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, for example, in Pakistan, it's the same thing. Let's say essential services, and I was actually on a lighter note. I was wondering if perfumes are essential services, and a hairdresser is an essential services.
Yeah, I got a bit excited and knocked my earphones out. So clarity. If you're going to send somebody home, give them clarity, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. The second is process. Right? Some people like process, and the best process is structure. Right?
Right.
Get up at 6, go for a walk at 7, have breakfast at 8, do this at 9, do this at 10. Structure is critical, and some people get very stressed without it. So you need to provide it. And again, in a minute, I'll show you how to do that. The third thing, and to me this is really interesting, is when you send people home, they will need people more than ever.
Interesting. That's very, very interesting. So when you send people home, they need people more than ever. Wow.
Yes.
True.
And I'll give you a good example. We're in lockdown. I can go for a walk in the morning. Yesterday morning, I went out of the back gate and went for a walk. And we live on a hill, so their houses low down and their houses high up. And I was walking along the road and I looked at this house that I'd never seen before. And there was this woman looking out of her window. She saw me and she went, "Hello, hello."
A human being, I see someone. I'm sure many of us could relate to that right now. And there are times I'll actually look out of my window and just see if I can find a soul outside.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is, what we're finding is even people who say they don't need people need people. I was listening to the BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, the other day, and they were interviewing a captain of a nuclear submarine. And he had done 180 days in a submarine. Wow. And so the question was, how did you survive? And he said a number of things. He said routine, cleanliness, a couple of other things. But the fourth thing he said was communicate. You have to talk to people.
Right.
Yeah. He did also say that you've got to accept the fact that in 180 days, you're going to annoy somebody.
Just the thought of it freaks you out. And I love the way it annoys somebody.
That's right. Yeah.
It's interesting because I found out in Wuhan soon, and this is something I read, that in Wuhan soon after the lockdown was released and they were out to go, the one place that was very crowded was actually the place where you get the divorce. So most of us sick and tired of probably seeing each other.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Okay, let's get to the last one, which is freedom. There's some people, and I know Farhad and I are these, that don't tie us down. We are totally trustworthy, but we're, I don't know, in my world, I see people taking a dog for a walk, and some dogs walk obediently along beside you. Others just want to break the leash. And yeah, I want to break the leash. Trust. You've got to let me break the leash because I will astound you. Now, we'll go into a little bit of detail now about each one, so we can magically hit the next slide.
Right. As you go into the magic, I'll just summarize at this point. And again, I think even the email interaction we had over this webisode, if you remember today morning, I was able to identify the green and the blue. So for our listeners, what we did is we said, okay, this is what the topic is. So very clear on the topic. This is more or less the process. And then we said, once we are in the green and the blue ocean has been clarified, we'll use our red and yellow to create the magic.
That's right.
I mean, that's the conversation that we had. I mean, that itself was such a strong trust builder between us. And the magic will happen now.
Yes. Oh, look at that. Excellent. Okay. How do you provide clarity? Now, if your world is like my world, then this has happened very quickly. In Sydney in the last 2 weeks, we were told to go home. That was it. Wow. Now, the blue quadrant, the logical, rational, analytical type person, if you want them to work well at home, just allow them a time to analyze. They need to think through what's happened logically and rationally. If you want them to do something, be very clear. So outline clear goals. Now, the next one to me is just personally, the biggest one of all, define the source of truth. Each one of us now is connected in this world through, Facebook, WhatsApp, this, TV, rumors, nephews. I made a big mistake 2 weeks ago. Over the internet, I got this letter all about coronavirus and how to avoid it and everything else. On one of the big hospitals in Sydney is St George Hospital, and it was on St George Hospital letterhead.
Right.
I believed it.
Yes.
And I sent it to all my friends, and 2 days later,
Ouch.
yes, ouch. So what you need to do as a team is agree. Now, I'm not saying you don't read the thing from St George Hospital. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
Go on Facebook, go everywhere, look at TV, look at Donald Trump, look at everything. Take it in, absorb it, but do not necessarily believe it as truth. So
that's beautifully said.
yeah.
I think that's what recently we've been highlighting. It's this forward journalism. Everybody's like taking it on themselves to forward any information that comes. They verify it, don't verify it, don't know the source of truth, not digest it, perhaps the entire information themselves, but forward.
Yes.
There's some thrill in that.
It is. So in the A quadrant, the blue quadrant, before you accepted the truth, beat it to death. Who is it? Who said it? What's the source? And then bounce it off some other people from these other quadrants, because they'll see it differently. Now, if it is true, believe it.
Right.
But if it isn't, don't. And that is so important when you go virtually, because it's harder to eyeball different people. Okay. The next one is, have a dashboard of company data. You've sent me home, but I still am trying to work. I still believe what I'm doing. And I mean, the one thing I'm missing now is driving, because I love to drive. Right?
Yeah.
And I have a tachometer that tells me how many revs. Right?
Wow.
So when you send me home, give me a tachometer so I know how many revs I'm doing, because it's important to me.
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, explain the purpose, of tools and things. If you want me to use whatever it is we're using, because there are 1,000,001 different things, then tell me why we're doing it and the reason why. Because I'm logical, rational, analytical. I'm not intuitive. I need to know. I just want to know how it works. I'm not being difficult.
True.
So that's the first one.
Yes, and just as we go on to the second one, I think this is very important. Some conversations I was having with some friends, it is now even more so critical that you identify what the deliverables are very, very clearly for people, because oftentimes people who do not know what they expected, then you expect them to be sitting and available in front of the screen all the time, will definitely mess up with trust. And it's a conversation that would come up. I think very beautifully said. It's a very important one. That in order to build trust within virtual teams, it is very, very important to have very clear goals, and also provide give them the purpose of selected tools and systems as well. Brilliant. Right. The second one is favorite.
Okay. Yes. Now you're going to send all sorts of people home, and amongst it, you're going to send some very, very good people home. Listen to them. They might break all the rules, but I'll tell you what, they're going to be good. So the first thing is listen to them. The second thing is check in with your talent more often than you think, because unfortunately, they're going to be 2 steps ahead of you. So, work with them. Outline your communication strategy. So tell everybody how you're going to communicate and why, because it's like the lady who waved to me. She wanted to communicate. Oh. Now, this is an interesting one. Even in the virtual world, you can have a coffee or a tea or whatever it is. Just say, Farhad, let's chat at 11. I'll have a mug and you'll have a 5 minutes, but you can do it. And the last one to me is the most important of all. I said in the blue, define the source of truth. The most important in the red is assume positive intent.
Right.
Because I can't see you, I can't touch you, I can't feel you, I can't, it's your words. I have to assume that you're trying to do the right thing.
Right. This is very, very important. In fact, there are some companies, what they've done is, and for the benefit of our listeners, what they've done is they have these 2 breaks in a day, with 15 minutes, which is very interesting because as it is, they're in front of the computer, they're forced to be in front of the computer, some companies, and then they're supposed to have these virtual tea breaks with each other. And when they have those virtual tea breaks, and some people actually said, because the positive intent is missing, they actually wonder if this tea break is actually a tea break or is just to make sure the person is dressed up for work.
Yeah.
So the assumption of the positive intent is critical. So even when you're hosting such things, it's important to understand why are you doing it. Is it to do a check on people or it's otherwise? By the way, what we've done is, I think because we also a lot of red people in our team. So Michael, what we've done is we've launched this thing called a web khana. Web khana is like a bar for tea. This is like a place like we get together and we chit chat and we go live. So that even if the world wants to join us and listen to us, they can be part of it. Again, it's so critical, especially I think in this part of the world where it is important to chit chat. I think the people really miss the cigarette breaks, the coffee or the what to call a conversation they used to have. So there's a lot of things that they're actually missing out, especially people who prefer thinking is red.
That's
Let
right.
me move on to the green, the process thinkers.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now, these are the thinkers who probably make good computer programmers. So they're into detail, they like structure, they like process. You ask them what they're going to do, they'll tell you. Right? They're organized, their house is neat and tidy, their books are alphabetically organized and so forth. Order. Right? And you need to provide them with that. So the first thing, and this was the first thing that the submarine captain I told you about said, routine. Provide a routine, structure the day. Don't just say you're working from home.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I might like that, but somebody who thinks like this, where do I sit? What do I do? What time do I start? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if you're working in a team as well, you can have some rituals. And by a ritual, I mean it just might be a cigarette break. It might be, it doesn't matter what it is, but every now and again during the day, you get people together. Now, these people need an agenda and they need you to stick to it. And you might be one of these people as well. So you have a virtual meeting and make sure, you share your screen and it has an agenda. And that's really the next one. So, any big company communication that comes out is structured and it's consistent, because that's what these people like. They don't like their world turned upside down. Right? And
Right.
believe you me, saying work from home is turning their world upside down. A lot of questions. And then obviously you need, lots of policies and procedures for remote environment. We certainly do here. I don't know whether it's the same wherever you are, but I learned the other day that whilst I have an employee at work, I'm responsible for their health and safety. If I send them home, I am also responsible for their health and safety while they're working. So
I think that's something that has significantly started right now, more so because of the coronavirus, and there is constant guidance and education in terms of what needs to be done, not only with yourself but with the children and the different people around. And you're right. I think it needs to be formalized much more, but it has started. This is like the new world order. And very interesting. You use agendas for efficient meeting. We had our own Funverks team meeting yesterday. It was very interesting. For the first 10 minutes, the high yellows and the high reds were very, very active till somebody put out the agenda that, what, we need to have the agenda. And I'm sure my team is laughing right now. Okay. Or for that matter, any other team that does lots of these virtual meetings, and you have somebody who just doesn't settle into the meeting yet.
Yes. Yeah, lovely.
Okay. Next one.
Okay. Now the last one.
Last one.
Now, if you say to me, I want you to work from home, whee! Oh boy, is that good? Yeah. And I will struggle with the green that we've just talked about and everything else, unless you tell me one thing, and that's why. Now, I believe in your part of the world, there are probably a lot of soccer players. Right?
We have soccer. Yes.
I love soccer as a game. I think it's terrific. The thing about these yellow people is they're like soccer players. They don't need the structure of the green. All they need is the 4 corner posts.
Right.
All they need to know is where the pitch is.
Right.
And they will roam, kick the ball, pass, score goals within that area. That's what I mean by context. You can give them a small area or a big one, but wow, let them go. They'll worry you, but they will deliver.
Yeah, and these are probably the kind of people who say, "Don't worry, I'll do it."
Yeah, relax. They'll do it.
Don't worry, I've got it all under control.
So
can I see the PowerPoint or the plan? It's right here.
Yeah. So the second one is be creative with your communication tools. Be a bit innovative. And there are, I don't know them all. There are so many now online communication tools you can use. Be inventive. Don't stick to Skype. Skype's terrific, but you can do better. Yes. So again, the third one is be willing to adapt, because those creative, talented people, all they want to know is where the corner posts are. And they'll do well. And this is the time to focus differently to the blue, who want clear, concise, goals and objectives now. What I want, strong in the yellow, is I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Give me that.
Yes.
And I'll shoot for that. But the last thing, and this really closes the loop for me, and it can be difficult, I know that, is trust your talented people. They will amaze you in this world. They will go home. You might lose contact with them for a few hours, but they're not going anywhere. And even if they're out and about, they are, thinking and working. So if we hit the last slide, back to, I guess, what brought Farhad and I together is Herrmann's core idea. And I'm going to stop in a minute, but I was just taking a big sigh, because if ever the world need to stop and think about what we're doing, it's right now. We are, certainly in my lifetime, facing the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. And if anybody says they know how to handle it and they know what's happening, then don't believe them. because I don't think anybody does. So, but each one of us in here, each one of us, I believe, with this core idea, we can actually make a difference. So, because as it says, everybody thinks differently. The biases we carry around will have a profound effect. So when you leave your house in the morning, or you don't because you're working from home, the way you think is going to have a profound effect on everybody around you, the people you work with, and so forth. So obviously we can tell you more. The second paragraph is become aware, stop and think about the way you think, and are you thinking about this in the right way? Can you think about it a bit differently? And is that other person who's currently driving you mad actually thinking perhaps the right way? And can you learn a bit from them? And that way, I believe you will learn, to listen and trust people, say, in a different way, because you learn to trust what's in here, and their thinking. Okay. True. As Farhad knows, I could talk forever, so I will now stop. And you can either
yeah, and I'll now look into the questions as well, but very beautifully explained. And I think where the trust element comes in significantly, I think it makes communication between people so easy, so convenient. Because and so it's not only my thinking which is of utmost important. I think very beautifully you highlighted how critical it is now for the team to come together. It's very interesting, because if you don't realize this, and I think I was a victim of this for so many years, there's a way that a yellow preferred thinking would would connect with people, and then you'd find people who are extreme greens and blues, and you say, you know what, they are dampening my entire excitement. Like a wet blanket, they put out all the fire, killing all the energy. Interestingly, soon after realizing the power of HBDI, one realizes that I need to be able to understand and be able to utilize that talent. But it's not only my talent, it is also the other person's talent, which is of utmost importance. And this is something that I really need to focus on. Others, if you have any questions, let us know. But as I said, we could be going on and on. Another thing that the magic of HBDI that comes in is, and what it's an instrument of about 116 statements, and it helps you understand what your preferred way of thinking is, and the other person's way of preferred thinking. It's very interesting. Some couple of days back, I was speaking to a client, and they had gone through the HBDI for themselves, for their team. And when they were raising some of the challenges, so my immediate response was to open up the reports and do a comparison. What is the real challenge? And it just became so easy to zero in, because I think this is something that was highlighted during our training or during the certificate program, that whole brain thinking is like the Google map. HBDI is the pin. So you know exactly where to focus on. Yeah, so you know exactly where to focus on in terms of the challenge. And I think that's just such a beautiful analogy to understand how this whole thing works. Questions, anybody? If you have any questions, please feel free to raise it. I see a question, yes. And I'm popping the question up on the screen now.
Yes. Can my preferred way of thinking change over time? The answer is yes, and it'll change for one of three reasons. Okay? It'll change, well, we think the way we think because of two reasons. One is nature, and the other is nurture. Nature is, our genetic imprint, what we're born with. Nurture is life's journey. Okay? So the first reason it'll change is because of life's journey. We get older, we move jobs, we go places, and we drift one way or the other. Not everybody changes. I haven't changed, I don't think, in my life, but that's one reason you change. The second reason you change is on purpose, right? I want to develop a greater preference for the green quadrant, for organized, thinking, because in my job that's important, therefore I'm going to do this. And you develop the motivation, the skill, and then the preference. So that's the second way. The third way, and coronavirus might be an example of this, the third way you change is you have a life-changing event, bang, where suddenly you don't have a job anymore. Suddenly your world is turned upside down. And then you begin to question everything from the previous life. So now, sounds dramatic, but yeah. So you change over time. You change because you want to, although it's hard, and you change because something happens. Or you're like me, and I suggest, Farhad, I don't think anything will change us. Too late.
We just started mastering it now. We're perfect cementing it right now. So yeah, Zen, if you're thinking of me, Zen, by the way, is also a colleague. Zen, if you think I'm going to change, I'll
Okay.
just pick a bet with what I'm doing. You remember? I have another question from Sabbe Aslam. It's a very interesting question. She says, "Don't you feel that people having inclination towards the red and yellow understands the blue and green, but the blue and green don't understand the red and yellow?" I think it's coming from a red and yellow, right, Sabbe Aslam? That's a very
Yes.
free question. Right. Yes,
Yes.
Michael.
The answer is probably yes. We've done a lot of research with, I guess, with different people comparing the HBDI, which is about thinking preference, and a particular tool we use, which is called the Genos tool, which is about EQ, emotional intelligence. Right? And there's absolutely no doubt that people, mainly in the red quadrant, I guess, are naturally more attuned to EQ than people in the blue quadrant.
So by default, they use a lot of emotion because they're intuitive and they use empathy. They've got great interpersonal. They have a sense of mood. So a red would probably understand or try to understand the blue and the green. And that is your thinking preference. Now, you see, now that is where trust comes in. Now, if you have two people working in a team, the Google map would say, you know what, practice empathy both sides. But empathy would come naturally, Sabbe Aslam, to you as opposed to the other person. That was beautifully said.
Yes, but we need to be careful here because our model, whole brain thinking and the HBDI, is not about good, bad, right, and wrong. So there's nothing good, you know. I mean, intuition is great sometimes.
Yeah.
It shows logic.
I think that the language that we use in HBDI is so powerful. It says these are all preferences, and preferences have consequences. So these words echo in my mind what Michael said the first time. I think this was in September or maybe August 2019 when we spoke. And I remember you keep on saying, we have preferences and preferences have consequences. Be aware of those consequences. We're not asking you to change, we're asking you to modify. Understand that preferences have consequences. I'm a good student, ain't I?
Yes.
Word for word. And I remember the sailing example as well with the paper that we'll hold it on for now. Okay, there's a question from a friend of mine. He's a fellow trainer as well. His name is Muhammad Zahid, and he's I see your face also now. He says, how is it different from insights color of personality types?
Okay. There are lots of instruments out there in the world. HBDI, Insights, DISCs, MBTI, Hogan, we can name them all. The difference between them all, right, is what are they measuring, right? So what's the concept that they're built on? Now, the Herrmann model is built on thinking, not on behavior, not on personality, not on all sorts of other constructs. So Herrmann is based on thinking, and that's the difference to me between Herrmann and Insights. Now, Insights and even Microsoft uses the same colors, blue, green, red, and yellow. So forget the colors, right? Herrmann is on thinking and thinking preference. Now, often the second question that people ask is, what instrument should I use? I like MBTI, I like DISC, I like Insight. Now, my answer to that is each one of them has their place. All right? What I want to know is, what's the outcome you want? What are you trying to do? And the example I used to give is, if you were going to go and if you imagine an X-ray and a photograph, all right? You can look at the X-ray and say, oh, he'd have big bones, or he'd be a big guy. You could look at the photograph and say, he'd have big bones. So you can make some assumptions between the two, but they measure different things. Now, if you were going to the airport to meet somebody who you'd never seen before, what would you use? Would you use an X-ray or would you use a photograph? So I think you'd use a photograph in that. So when clients say to me, what's the difference and what should I use? I get that question and I get rid of it. And I say, what are you trying to do? What's the focus? Because personality and insights have their place. Thinking and HBDI has its place. So to me, Mohammed, that's the difference. Both are good, but they do different things. And you might use both. Okay?
Right. That's very beautifully clarified. And again, as I said in the introduction, that you'll find a lot of stories and little anecdotes and analogies. That's what the Yellow Brain masters at. I think we'll just take about 2 more questions if it's okay. I see a lot of questions, but I just pick those, and I'll tell you what we're doing with the other question. Okay, so this is the question by Raksha. Can a brain reflect behavior from all 4 sections at the same time, like combining one feature from each, or will it be a disastrous combination of human brain? To use the codes, because I just think I love using the codes. Like our personal language, it's like a 1-1-1-1 this person is trying to achieve, isn't it?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell you guys what 1-1-1 and these codes are. I'll let you know before we conclude. Okay, Michael.
All right. Yeah. Lovely question. The way I would answer it is, I'm right-handed, and I think 9 out of 10 people are right-handed. 1 out of 10 are left. Very few people are ambidextrous. Very few people have an equal preference for 2. Now, in our global database, less than 3% of the population are what Farhad's just described as whole brain. In other words, less than 3% of the population have an equal preference for both hands or an equal preference for all 4 quadrants. Right? And that's perhaps unfortunate, but difference is good. Difference is what makes the world go round. Now, 2 answers, I guess, to your question. As an individual, I'm very strong in 1 quadrant. So I'm never in doubt. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm often wrong because I'm very strong in the 1 quadrant. If you're very strong or equally strong in the all 4, then it's that lovely expression of, I'm in 2 minds about this, or I'm in 3 minds. I could. And one of the consequences, see, I'm very decisive because I know. I get it wrong, but I know. So I make a decision. Yeah. People who are equal are less decisive because they're running it around. So that can be a consequence. Now, people, again, who are whole-brained are incredibly valuable in teams because they're the linguist. They can speak 6 languages. so they can understand what the yellow quadrant is saying. They can integrate it into the blue. They have a critical role in teams, and I believe, in trust. Yeah. But again, as Farhad says, there's consequence. And it's not bad, it's just consequence. I'm very strong in the yellow, so I trip over things because I get excited. My wife Annie very strong in the green because she's a little bit tentative. But that's it. But yeah,
True.
all brained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Darshan, what we spoke about 1111 is it's basically when you go through the HBDI process and somebody asks how do we know what our preferences are, it's 116, and we'll give you our email address. You connect with us for more information with specific whatever, whether you're looking at the picture or you need the X-ray. So if you specify that, we'll be more than happy to get back to you. So for example, we have these codes, and it's very interesting because when I've interacted with Michael's team members, I noticed below the email, some of them have this little 4-digit code. Now, these 4-digit codes are basically how they think. So in his team, he's got people that I've never even seen. Yet when I have those email interactions, I understand the kind of writing I need to possess. So who's a 2121? The 2121 would be somebody who's very high on green and a yellow. So your thinking has these codes, and it's magical. I think the organizations that we've worked with, and even in Michael's 3 decades of experience, these codes actually help you understand and help you communicate the right way in order for that trust to come up, and more so now. We've just had a brilliant 1 hour. This is what we had planned for. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. It was amazing interacting with you. It was amazing speaking with you as usual. What I would like is others, if you would like to have further information or you're interested in this for your own particular team, if you could just write to us at info@funverks.com with a specific question of what are you actually looking for, we'll be more than happy to get back to you, to speak with you. So the email ID is just flash over here, info@funverks.com. Feel free to write to us. Do stay connected to Bizverds. We wish you a lot of good health and happiness. Michael, thank you very much for taking the time out. I think it was an amazing experience. The slides, I got some messages over here on WhatsApp saying he was just so authentic. So although it was a slideshow, he was just so authentic, it didn't feel like it. I think that's the magic of the yellow and the red. So thank you once again. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do stay connected. Make sure you subscribe our channel and click on the bell icon. Michael, you want to say something?
Okay. Oh, no, just it's an honor. It really is. I love this new world.
Great. Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.